you would find sometimes a Muslim and a Jew that are more similar to a Jew and a Jew, or Muslim and a Muslim, for example, because it's connected to other materialistic things, not to Rabbi, because the same Rabbi, so it's like that. اوكي اسمي رفرام حداد. انا مولود في جربة في حارة كبيرة. امي من حارة صغيرة وابوي من حارة كبيرة. هذا من زوز الحارات اللي كانت جويش كوارترز في جربة. وكبرت في جيروزالم في قدس. وخديت عملت غادي photography school for 4 years 4 سنين. And then I started basically my art career. If you finish art school or a photography school, you don't go to be an artist. Only 1-2% starting visual arts. I work in Italy in the summer after my graduation, and then I started to basically open a bit towards art, and it was very important. It was also kind of like a trip into my family back. I mean, we moved to Jerusalem when I was young, when I was a baby. We arrived when I was 2 years old to Jerusalem, and I grew up in a family that speak Arabic only, but it was very old. The dialect was it's a German dialect from the end of the 70s. So, but the food we had and the clothes, I mean, my grandmother was wearing sifshari in the house. My grandfather Jiddi was Sarwal Arabi Dima. It was very, very kind of like small Tunis. And the first time I came to visit was basically when I was living in Italy, 20 years after. And then I started to reconnect basically and I started to be curious about where I come from and the aesthetics. I mean, because this is what an artist usually do. It's not was just the kind of watching the country, but also understanding all kinds of insights about where I'm from and how it's related to my life now. Because it's not alone. I'm not like doing a work of historian. I'm doing a work of an artist, which is kind of like contemporary understanding of the situation, of my life, of my culture, or where I come from. If I'm against that, if I'm with that, kind of like relationships, basically. So this is how things started, basically. It was a bit different from other Tunisians there, basically. We had connection to Tunis. My uncle was still living in Tunis. He was the chief rabbi of Tunisia, friend of Ben Ali. I mean, and he was coming to visit, and my family used to go there for weddings. So we had still like the food, the ingredients. We had the fish. We had everything basically still. And we had people coming and going. So we had the smell of Tunis always in the house. Like even the whiskey, the bad whiskey that was produced in Tunis, and the bucha and the cigarettes, everything, we had still the scent. And Tunis for us was for me at least, it was kind of a dream. It was not a real place. It was a word that you always say, kalma hadi dima Tunis, Tunis, Tunis. But before I came back to Tunis, I didn't really understand what is Tunis. And it was still a dream when I came back. In the beginning, it was, I know the street names, I know the language, I smell in the streets, even when they grill filfil heka, it's the same smell like I know from home. But still kind of a place that exist in the past. It's like, this is your identity also. Everyone call you Tunsi. And the coming back to this kind of family, to the aesthetics, to the language, to the food, came only after our school. Only after I studied art. First of all, I mean, the aesthetics is not only Jewish, it's Tunisian, the aesthetics. It's very important to understand that when we talk about our identity. I mean, it's Tunsi, it's not mush Yehudi Tunsi. 95% of our material culture, makla and clothes and pro and the jargon, everything is Tunisian. I mean, it's very different from a Russian Jew, for example. We have nothing to do with Russian Jews, except Rabbi Wahad, but we have Muslims. So it's not really, really big difference. In Jerba, it was very, very, it's about bled, it's about what grows, it's about the seasons, it's about the food, it's about alouche fi avril, it's about superstitious, connected to fish, connected to color, the blue, aesthetics. It's all very, very, very wide. And it's connected to ABD, it's connected to Amazik, connected to many, many groups in Jerba, basically. So it's a very, very unique to Jerba, not to Jews. Because when you do art, it's not only about history, it's about materialistic. and it's about the aesthetics, the basic aesthetics of a person, how he eats and what he eats. I mean, we eat the same tomato, the same hut. You would find sometimes a Muslim and a Jew that are more similar to a Jew and a Jew, or Muslim and a Muslim, for example, because it's connected to other materialistic things, not to Rabbi, because the same Rabbi, so it's like that. I came back here 2014, almost 10 years ago, 2015, 2015. And I remember when I did the contract I took دار في حق الواد. مشيت بلدية, and it was for me, I was shaking. It was kind of collapse of like a connection between the real life, and Tunis. Because I used to live in my uncle's house في Palestine. I used to have apartment there, but it was never a contract. There was never baladia. There was never something real. As an artist, I mean, it was very almost meeting a sculpture that is frozen and then being part of it in some point. I think it's also about, like, even when we talk about Tunisian Jews, what is this? What is Tunisian Jews? Is there something called Tunisian Muslims? Not really. I mean, there's something called Tunisian. So already this kind of like question if it exists or not. I mean, coming back to Tunis is already part of kind of political statements that I am part of Tunis, which was always the case, but it's a real part. It's not like I was Tunisian, or even the question that Twensa, they ask themselves in Tunis, are you Tunisian? For example, they ask me, you have بدك تعرف تونسي or you are Tunisian? Because this kind of like national questions from the independence. I mean, suddenly we have بدك تعرف, suddenly we have a flag, kind of like that is ours. So they ask, are you real? I mean, of course. I mean, my mother 3,000 years in Jerba, but still, I mean, it's not. People don't really understand the definitions of are you real Tunisian, or what is real Tunisian? I mean, is it if a Tunisian or non-Jew who live in Canada is a real one and the one who lives in Jerba is not real one? And so these kind of questions are cultural, are political, and being part of the Arab world again, it is a kind of and actually making contemporary, which is very important distinction between the pastness. I didn't plan to come back to Tunis. It was a very because still Tunis, as I said, was a bit kind of like place in the past, and not really place I can enter. I can only watch it. I can take a photo of that. I cannot be in the photo. And then after 6 months, I was in Hakalwad, and then I started to live in Babhar a bit and starting to understand the structure of Tunis. Also, with my grandparents are buried in Tunis because my mother grew up in Tunis. She's from Jerba, but she grew up in Tunis. And I came back to their house and I met her neighbors, old neighbors. And suddenly, I started to have some. You go from house to house and you kind of make kind of zarbiya, but a new one. And I have a walk about that also in the show, about kind of like there's a person called Gabriel. He used to walk a lot in the city. I used to walk with him, and there's a video walk about it, an animation about the station that he was like his map basically of Tunis. And slowly I started to be in the map itself, not only describing the map. And it took time, and understood from reactions of friends of mine in the world, all over the world, that this is kind of like almost important, this kind of like coming back. And I had insights slowly coming back to me about things in the past, that things in the present that connected to the political meaning of that. I mean, I struggle a lot because of my work, and I'm old, I'm almost 50, and I travel more and more, and everywhere I was, I never felt more comfortable than here, basically. So this is something like I'm always checking. I'm not trying to be a martyr and stay here. Like, it's like really one of the most comfortable places, although it's not very well managed, which is okay. I mean, I'm not a businessman. So for me, it's like, I like the facts also. I like this kind of stuff because this is for me very good for my work. I mean, I had shows in New York, in museums in France, in Germany. It was not important as doing a show in Tunis, basically, as part of, let's say, the contemporary history of Tunisia. My grandfather had a printing house. He printed stuff. He was part of German history. The work of the cemetery was very important for me, the Bourgel, because Bourgel is also is a past work. Bourgel is the past. People dead. I mean, that not exist anymore. So this is very important for me. It was very important for me to work on it in a contemporary way. How to work on a historical place, address. People go there to see it, people who died. And I did like kind of kfas. I made like kfas, like a big cage for Rafram, where it was all the center of cages. And I put kind of a sound walk there because I used to go there to see my grandparents, but then I built some tombs for people who died. And the smell and of the trab and the sound of the birds. And what I like about installation art, like more than paintings or even videos, is that you can make kind of sensual experience, kind of like putting people in your, giving them kind of a whole thing, like kind of sound, smell, and even temperature. Make them cold, make them warm, and they go inside and they feel something. And of course they feel what they feel, because I have no control on feelings. It was very interesting for me to see the kind of, again, the kind of like contemporary use in the history, in a part of history. Because this is what I do here. I'm dealing with historical exhibits, and I'm trying to show their relevance, in a way, to contemporary life, in the end. Jerba for me is really the past. It's really like the tradition, the heaviness, the religious, very, kima salafa Yehudeka, very anti-art, anti-everything, anti-French. ما نحكيش فرنسيس على خاطر جرب يهودي هكا. حرام, you cannot study French. Any modern stuff. It was. And the louage for me is the transportation between Tunis and Jerba. This is the thing. And when I break it, it's kind of a statement that I want to stay, مش في Tunis, but I want to stay in the where I am now as an artist. I'm not the Gerbian, in a way. I'm not the Gerbian. I'm not historian German, and I don't want to go back there and to use the tools that I had in Jerba, which is not tools. There's like kind of like, if you're a German, if I was staying in Jerba, I would work in jewelry, probably. Bijouterie or teaching in a school like that's it. This is the only two options you have. You have no options of being retrospective or critical, nothing. It's very old school, very primitive, which have its own, for me as an artist from outside, because I'm always with Jerba, I'm playing to outside there, inside there. They still trust me enough so I can have access to symbolism and stuff, but I'm not part of them. And the louage is this. The louage. Also, I'm louagist now, which is very important. I have a job. I didn't have a job in my life. I have a car now. I have Toyota. It doesn't work, but Majalaka. And it's kind of like, it was really, I paid 4 trucks to break it in Yehudia, close to Tunis. We did kind of crashing the whole thing, and that you cannot travel a bit with it anymore. And the mosaic work was connected to it's called history class. It's kind of like people who are missing from the history classes in Tunis, basically. So it's mostly, for me, it was women, Jews, and black, kind of the minorities. And I work with atelier في الجام that doing the mosaic for governments building, because in government building you have in Tunis, you have all the time part of this kind of like Carthaginian, Roman history. And the idea is to work with him and to do this work like of the micro mosaic of the faces, like kind of portraits of my grandmother, who was she spoke only Tunisian. She was always at home. She never walked in her life. She walked only in the house. I wanted to put her on the podium, so people will look at her. And then I met Lutfi Gariani. He's a photographer, a good friend of mine, and his mother is from Sfakas. They are from Libya originally, Gariani, and I hosted him to make kind of like collaboration inside the work. And my grandmother was like, and I put her next to my grandmother, kind of like 2 women that could basically speak to each other, basically, so they will not be alone in the space, and to give them kind of like the honor they have, the respect that I can. It was kind of like the feminist part of the show. There was like the shifsari on the side, and the mosaics was kind of like a conversation between the women. I do a lot of work about my mother, about my grandmother, about this kind of stuff that are we don't speak a lot enough about them. In life and stuff, and especially in the traditional families that that, now the woman is walking, yes, but before that she also walked. So this is kind of thing that I'm always trying to walk and to put in. So it was important to have my grandmother there, basically, to have to bring her also in kind of very old way, mosaic, but also very contemporary. There's no space, there's no art space في Germany. I work with contemporary spaces. عملت حاجة 2 years ago that was kind of experiment, kind of public space. So I put a tent in the olive كفلاحة الزيتون بحدة حارة صغيرة, where my mother is from. Because النشات الحارة صغيرة, they used to have a dark room for the menstruation. كيما مزيك, very very old way of حارة كبيرة لا, but حارة صغيرة they were like that. And so I kind to do something connected to this. And I work on small synagogue in Tamar, بعد مدنين. I put a fluka there and I put a soundwalk. So this is like the maximum I can do, kind of public space walks, because Tunis Majal, there's no, in Jerba, there's not, in Tunis even, you don't have much places to show. So Jerba is still very touristic. It's like, you have project like Jerbahood, like, tourist stuff, not really reflective. It's going to take time. من حارة صغيرة originally. It's a very the old Jewish community, the oldest one in the world. عنده 3000 سنين غادي في جيربا, في حارة صغيرة في وسط الجزيرة. But so الحارة الصغيرة, people, they always live around the Janub. They go to Tawin, they go Midnin, and they were the only Jewish family, so they went with Tamri because they just went with them. And then when I came back there, I did a walk. I took a small room that used to be the synagogue. It was like kind of like hieroglyph, like kind of like this kind of triglyph, this kind of like old houses, Star Wars shit. And that's where my mother lived. And I put a fluka there because she told me that we used to be there in the desert, and we missed Jerba. Jerba was الحوت, الفلايك, كل شيء. It was بحر here. There's nothing here. We have a donkey. They take us to Midnin. Midnin is the modern place. Midnin, Sitinat, you have nothing also, of course. So I built a fluka for her, and I kind of made a sound walk with Miriam El-Farjani. She's an actress, Tunisian actress, kind of singing a song from the prayer, like a woman singing, which is not common in the Jewish belief. And I invited people from the village to come and go into the fluka and to listen to the sound. So it was kind of like, also like a bit weird, why also the village. It was very interesting to walk there. Also with kind of the connection with the people there. I told them I'm Tamri, because my mother always called herself Tamri, she's from Tamar. And then it was very interesting, kind of like this connection of also the food, because they have kind of stuff they do with the dates. And it was very interesting, this kind of experience. We stayed there like almost 2 weeks, like building the whole installation and stuff. When good artwork is done, is very individual. It's not like something you copy, it's something that comes from you. It can represent everything, and it's the language. This is what difference, if you talk about Renaissance or European art like Van Gogh or Picasso. This is the only people remember from these countries. Nobody remembers the Prime Minister of Spain. Who cares about these people? The only thing that stays after, because we say good artwork live 500 years. Good artwork, and this is what actually it's the language. This is what stays, and because it's kind of like witnessing, it's kind of reflection of a situation of life, and it's always very individual, which means it's part of what's the difference between Tunis and Algeria? Is the artist, is the culture, this is the most thing important, not the economics, or not the lawyers. It's the culture, is the kind of like the representation of visual, the color, and the beliefs and the customs that are reflected in art, basically. In this kind of like very thin, I'm from the Yehudi Gerbi, so what I do is part of this kind of like fusé of Tunis, in a way of everything, and it's still not something that people invest in it. It's like people like Bazaar is still like not a good place to go until Tunis Majalika. It's not a like attractive place to go, because it's still like kind of like not important for many people. But for me, art is the most important. If I would have money and I want to invest in Tunis, I would put money in art. I would trying to reach out to 100 people here who are young at high school and they want to study art, and to support them for 10 years, and so that we will have, because if Tunis will change completely with 100 artists, more 100 artists that do a good work. And this is something that we still miss a lot, but I think it's one of the most important aspects. I think every work of every artist in Tunis is important. I think if we're going to have 1,000 active artists in Tunis, we're going to be a better country, for sure, 100%. Or we're going to be million artists, it's going to be incredible. Everywhere in the world, even England, even Japan, even Algeria, Congo, everywhere that you have people who basically are working. This is the work about, because all of us, every artist that is making good work about himself or stuff, it is individual pieces, but as individuals, we are part of this kind of like universalism thing. And we are part of this kind of like big story. And as we are more accurate in our work, we are more and more similar, not similar to each other, but we can be read by others. People can read my work even if they're not Serbian Jews, I think. I think people go there and they have their own reflections. And that's when you multiply it by different stuff, different objects, different videos, different works. You create a kind of like less identity crisis, less something that is actually real, basically. And this is very important. Me, just to continue work, I mean, to understand more about myself, about who I am, about where I am. And I'm really happy about what I do. I mean, this is like something that is very important.